everybody and welcome to my channel. Today we are doing my favorite video. I know most people's favorite video is doing the worst books because you people are crazy. You people are crazy. You guys really like to see people not liking things, but I really like doing my favorites. My favorites is always more fun. It's uplifting. It makes me happy instead of making me want to punch something, which is what my worst books always makes me feel like. But yeah, we're moving on to the best books of 2023, and I have some honorable mentions we're going to start with. We're going to very briefly talk about, and then we're going to move into my top 10, which was actually quite difficult. I had a very difficult time deciding where books went and what my favorite was, and I'm still not like set on my top three. Pretty much my top three this year are interchangeable. Starting off with some honorable mentions, I feel like these are gonna be a little surprising, but the first honorable mention is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This was a soft 5-star. I do wish some things were done differently, but overall I did give it a 5-star. I really loved it. I thought it went in a very interesting direction, and I really like how the book ended. And if you don't know, I was gonna say, you gotta be living under a rock if you don't know. Hellbent is the continuation of Ninth House, where we're following our main character Alex Stern, who is going to school, shoot, where does she go? Is it Harvard? I don't remember. Is it Yale or Harvard? Anyway, it's a school that has a bunch of secret societies, like the Bonesmen, etc. And it turns out that these secret societies are actually doing magic, and she can see ghosts. And so she gets brought into the Ninth House, Lethe House, where they basically protect the outside world from these wealthy idiots who were given way too much power. And there's a lot of drama, etc. And there's like a big mystery, and the mystery is semi-solved in Hellbent, which is amazing. I never thought we were actually going to get a second book, so I'm happy with pretty much anything because I really just wanted a second book. But I loved it. I like the direction that we took. I thought it was very interesting. Next honorable mention is Defy the Night. Again, I think all of these are 5 stars. One of them isn't. One of them isn't a 5 stars, but it's close. It's like a 4.75. Yeah, Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. I really like this one. I really like this one. I thought this was just a really cute, fun, young adult fantasy story. It definitely kind of brought you back to like old school young adult fantasy, where it's a kingdom, we've got to do something to help the kingdom, and prince things going on, outside stuff happening, apothecary things. It was just fun. It's fun. There's a lot of cool political intrigue. We got hidden identities, and it's just so much fun. And I really enjoyed that one. My next honorable mention is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I really liked this book. I thought it was so much fun what they did with Death as a character, and we're following our main character who was supposed to basically die as a baby but ended up avoiding death, and it turns out she cannot die, but she can like partially, and she ends up being able to see death, and her and Death end up having to solve a murder mystery, and it's so fun. It is so fun. I have not started Foxglove yet, or I think I've read like a chapter of Foxglove, but I am very excited to read Foxglove relatively early this year because I believe Wisteria should be coming out middle of the year, middle of 2024, so I am quite excited to continue in that series. And our last honorable mention is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is something I read very recently, and I loved it. I talked about it in my biggest surprises video, but I really loved it. I cannot explain entirely why I loved it. It gave me a lot of the same vibes as Alone with You in the Ether, but messier. And it's like Alone with You in the Ether is after the healing process begins, and Magnolia Parks is like during the drama still happening and people not having their lives together, and it just made me feel things I was not expecting. I thought I was going into Magnolia Parks with like Vanderpump Rules drama and that kind of stuff, like reality TV drama, and for me, a lot of people I feel like definitely got that out of it. For some reason, I don't know if it was the mood I was in while I read this, but for some reason I read this as if it was like the most heartbreaking thing on the planet. It felt so human to me. It felt so human the way people were reacting to the situation, and it just felt more realistic than a lot of these breakup stories where people who were together 10 years or they call it quits and then they don't deal with anything afterwards. This felt so much more real, where like you have slip-ups, you backtrack, you don't just stop loving someone because something happened, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart, especially the ending, and I cannot wait to continue the series. I know the next book is Daisy Hates, which is following one of the other characters in the series that we didn't really follow too much, but then book 3 is following Magnolia Parks again, and I just oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, this is following our main character, Magnolia Parks, who is broken up with her longtime boyfriend, BJ, and still after 3 years, they can't let each other go, and they just are constantly hurting each other because of the hurt that was originally put there, and it's just devastating. It's devastating, and oh my gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens next. All right, we are finally moving into the top 10. Coming in at number 10, we have Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yes. Yes. Okay. I loved this. I loved this so much. This one gave me the same vibes as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I felt very similar to Carrie Soto is Back as I did to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, while I felt Daisy Jones and the Six and Malibu Rising kind of were together for me because I didn't like those as much. I did end up loving the ending of Daisy Jones and the Six. I think I gave it a 4.5. I gave Malibu Rising a 4, and then Carrie Soto's Back got a 5, and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is like one of my favorite books ever. So yeah, I loved Carrie Soto's Back. We're following Carrie Soto, who is a retired tennis player, but she comes out of retirement when a new tennis player is about to, I don't know if she breaks her record, but she's about to tie it, or she ties it. So Carrie Soto has to train and come back, and it's just a story about her being very unlikable. It's kind of like Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo makes dumb decisions, and she's kind of an unlikable person. And Carrie Soto is very similar. She is just an unlikable person because of her competitiveness, and she just doesn't see the necessity of having friends, and that kind of changes throughout the book, and it's so good. It's so good, the growth we see in Carrie Soto, and I sobbed like a baby multiple times in this book, and I absolutely loved it. Coming in at number 9, we have The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I was not expecting this to be one of my favorite books of the year. I really was not. That was not on my 2023 bingo card at all. And it's funny, I'm reading Pamela Anderson's memoir, and it's making me realize just how good Britney Spears' memoir is, because Pamela Anderson's is just, it's interesting, but it's very surface level, and it feels almost like she's trying to hide who she really is behind the story, while Britney Spears is just like, this is what happened, this is how I feel about it, understand my side of everything, and here you go. And it was like, oh my gosh, because it wasn't even about the drama that it was good. It just felt like she was laying out the facts for you about her life and the emotional impact it had on her, and it makes you really feel like you understand what she went through in life, and that's why it was so good. She didn't even have to include half the drama that she did, and it still would have been that good. She could have glossed over a ton of stuff and just talked about her feelings about each decade that she went through, and it would have been enough. That's how good the storytelling was, and that's why it is easy 5 stars, and I love her. And I ended up getting a physical copy because I listened to it on audiobook. My husband ended up getting me a physical copy of her book so I can put it on my bookshelf because it was so good. Coming in at number 8 is Imogen, Obviously by Becky Albertalli. I love this book. I love this book. I was so worried because Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda is one of my favorite books of all time, and it was one of my favorite books of the year that I read it. And I then tried to read Leah, and I hated it. I was like, oh no, I really didn't like her as a character. I was not happy with that. So I picked this one up with like a grain of salt because I was like, this could go either way. This could go either way. And I'm so happy to say it went the Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda direction. I loved this story. It felt so very paranoid inducing. While I was reading this book, I was having a crisis. I was in full crisis because it makes you feel like you're a teenager again, and everything you do is wrong. Everything you do is confusing. Every choice you make is probably the wrong choice. And it was so paranoid inducing as I was reading it that I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I don't want to be in this headspace again. I never want to be a teenager again. And so I absolutely loved reading from Imogen's perspective. And the romance was so cute, but it wasn't like punch you in the face romance. It was definitely a lot about Imogen's coming of age and her not worrying as much what people think about her, because she's so obsessed and worried about saying something wrong that she doesn't enjoy life. She's so terrified to say something wrong that she can't enjoy herself. So she finally lets that go, and she enjoys who she is as a person and makes new friends, and it's just so cute. If you want a really good young adult romance, I highly, highly, highly suggest this one. Coming in at number 7 is one of my biggest surprises of the year, The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. I love this book. I love this book. This book on this list, I would say Carrie Soto's back, this one, and one other made me cry more than any other book that I read this, like, combined. Like, oh my gosh. I cried so hard at the end of this book. We are following a mermaid. It's a weird book. I guess it's more of a novella. It's weird. We were following a mermaid who has basically just burned the kingdom that she was forced to live in down to the ground, where her kids did. So she was caught by this king, and he forced her to marry him, and he like pulled her teeth out, and because mermaids are vicious and mean in this, and they have children, and the king doesn't realize that the kids are going to be vicious mermaids as well. So her children end up destroying, like razing the kingdom to the ground, killing the king, and she has to go off and find somewhere else to live. And a plague doctor decides to go with her, a non-binary plague doctor who never takes their mask off, and it's just their journey and their friendship and more continuing on in the story. And as they're trying to find somewhere else to live, they're basically sucked into a dark story, fairy tale almost-esque thing happening, and it is devastating and beautiful, and I loved every second of it. I love the book. I will say it was a little bit difficult to get into because of the writing style, but by the end, I could not handle. I read this in one sitting. It was amazing. Coming in at number 6 is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I know a lot of people did not like this. I loved it. I gave it a 5-star. I did not like it as much as Fourth Wing, but I absolutely loved Iron Flame. I thought it was such a good continuation. It did exactly everything that I wanted it to do, minus the ending. Oh, I'm stressed. That ending is so stressful. I know a lot of people thought it was poorly written, but I didn't. I thought it was very well planned out. My best friend Marissa and I literally spent hours going through the book and finding all the hidden things in it. You don't just write that like randomly. There was so much callback into the first book. Like, the first book set up so many things that happened in the second book that you never saw coming. It was just very small things throughout the first book that were immediately called back to in Iron Flame, and there's so many things combined in Iron Flame and Fourth Wing that will be brought up in the third book. And I really thought it was going to be written poorly, but it turned out that she had written the first 3 books already, something like that. And that's why it seemed rushed, but it really wasn't. It was already done, and they just had to edit it more. That's why 2 books came out easily, but she does have to do a big rewrite probably for book 3 because they added 2 more books on. So I think it like started off as a trilogy, and then they decided to have it be 5 books. But so they said that the next book won't come out until December, possibly not until next year, 2025. So I'm sad that I have to wait that long, but I loved Iron Flame. I loved it. I don't care what other people say. I loved it. Coming in at number 5 was one that originally was at my number 1 spot for quite a while, until about halfway through the year, and that is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. This book was amazing. It was so good. We're following our 2 main characters who both have some issues, Aldo and I don't remember the other character's name, but our main female character has, I want to say it's bipolar disorder. I can't remember if it was schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, but she has one of those. She basically has to deal how to learn living day to day, and it's hard for her. She constantly makes decisions that she then regrets later, and she has to learn to live with medication, and it's so tough watching her point of view because there's so many things that she can't control that is just so difficult. That is so difficult to read about someone who knows they're spiraling, can't stop it, and just tries to find a way to survive life at such a disadvantage. And then you're following our other main character who has some sort of form of like, he's on the spectrum. We don't know exactly where. It's never really named, I don't think. And they come together, and it's so interesting seeing the 2 different types of personalities and how they mix and how they help each other. They bring out the best in each other, and it is beautiful to watch a relationship like that. It was beautiful watching them grow together and become a unit and working together to overcome the hardships in their lives and becoming these 2 people who can rely on each other. And it was stunning. It was stunning. And it didn't gloss over difficulties. Like, they definitely had moments where they were at each other's throats and it was not working because of the issues that were going on. And it was stunning. It was stunning. And I definitely understand more about mental health after reading this book, because the author, Olivia Blake, actually has what the main character has and wrote from a very deep place in her heart. And you felt that. You really felt that she understood what this character was going through, and it was stunning. And I feel like that's what made the book so good, is that it felt real. Because I feel like if someone else wrote this who didn't fully understand and didn't go through it themselves, I don't know if they would really get the point across of this book. But Olivia Blake did an amazing job, and it was so good. Coming in at number 4, another one that was on my top list for quite a while was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. I love this book. Kind of what brought this one down was me reading the second book. It's still a 5-star, but my memory of the other book taints this one a little bit, so it definitely is not in the top 3, but we were just outside it. This is number 4. And it's following our main character, Emily Wilde, and our other main character, Wendell, and it's just fun. It is just a cute, cozy fantasy about Emily Wilde, who definitely is also kind of on the spectrum. Again, it's not really talked about, but she definitely has a lot of social anxiety. She doesn't do well in social situations, which is kind of where Wendell comes in. He kind of explains to her, this is what's happening. Like this, when you do this, this is what they're taking it as. And that kind of helps her adjust and realize like what's going on, and kind of helps other people understand her without her changing too much. Like she doesn't have to force herself to be uncomfortable in situations entirely, and it helps other people understand her. And I love that. And it's them creating an encyclopedia of fairies, just what it says. She has gone to this like northern region in the middle of nowhere, and she's studying the fae folk or whatever that live there, and it's just really fun. It's a really, really good time. All right, we have entered the top 3. We have entered the top 3. These, again, like I said, these are all pretty much interchangeable, but I did do a broad 3, 2, 1. So coming in at number 3, we have Fourth Wing. This was tough. Like I said, the top 3 are the top 3 for a reason. Fourth Wing, I loved it. I even read this at a time when I wasn't reading anything, and I still enjoyed it. So that is saying something. I was reading this when I was having really, really difficult medical problems earlier in the year, and I loved it still, which is not something I say very often. It was so good. It's so good. It's following our main character, Violet, and is Zayden a main character? I mean, he kind of, but we're following Violet, and she gets forced into becoming a dragon rider in the Dragon Quadrant. And it's just fun. It's a lot of trials. It reminds me a lot of Vampire Academy a little bit, which is kind of weird to say, but there's the training montages, the battles, the fighting, it's just really good. It's really, really fun. I feel like people who take this one too seriously definitely are not going to like it, and that's probably what happened with some like more intense fantasy readers. But if you just kind of are there for a fun fantasy trip and a cute romance, yeah, this is a great book. I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books of the year, obviously, because it's at number 3. I love this book. None of you should be surprised about this either. I feel like if you're watching this, you shouldn't be surprised. Number 1. Our number 1 book this year is a book I just read. It just came out. Again, I feel like it shouldn't be a surprise, but it is Heartstopper, number 5. So good. It was so good. I was a little worried because Heartstopper number 4 was a little bit too serious for me. It was a little too much. I more enjoy the cutesy stuff. I definitely see why they went more serious, but it's not normally my thing, going a little too serious with it. I enjoy Heartstopper because it's cute and adorable, and it got very real in Heartstopper 4. So in Heartstopper 5, we definitely got back to the cutesy stuff, but it was also really nice reading it after reading 4, because you can see Charlie healing from what happened in 4. There's definitely still some issues that he has, but you can see he's in the process of healing, and hopefully, like obviously there's gonna be points where he backslides, because that mental health is not a straight line. It's not constant. It is, you have your ups and downs. So I loved seeing the ups after having so many downs in the last book, and I loved it. I loved seeing the growth of Charlie, and I love seeing the growth of Nick, especially Nick in this book, because Nick has an identity issue where he doesn't know really who he is, because he's had so many big changes happening. So I loved him going and exploring colleges and kind of finding his voice and deciding what he wants for him. loved that. I loved seeing that, and then also obviously seeing Charlie coming into his own and realizing he can do the things that he wants to do, and it was just so good. It was so good, and I don't want number 6 to be the last one. There's so many things you can do. This could go on so long. I don't want it to end. I'm gonna be so sad when it ends because, like I said, we have so many more things we could go through. I can't imagine 6 wrapping up everything we went over in 5. Like, there's so many more things we can do. So I'm curious if she'll pick up the series in book form or if she's just gonna leave them to your own imagination as to what happens, which... So anyway, those are my best books of 2023. I had some really, really good books. Like I said, that top 3 is very interchangeable. You could put them anyway and I would be fine with it. But I had a really good time. I had a really good time reading some big surprises like The Salt Grows Heavy. Never thought I would read that. It was kind of just a spur of the moment. I wanted something short to read and I ended up loving it. And yeah, that is everything I have. So make sure you comment down below your favorite books of 2023 if you enjoyed any of the ones that I mentioned, or if you didn't like any of them. I also am totally fine hearing about that. As usual, I read everything and I tend to comment. So yeah, I'm cool with talking about books you don't like if I like them. It's fine. Everyone has their own reading opinions. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future content. And of course, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. And that is all I have for you today. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next video.